In Lviv, it's the afternoon, and let's check in with Joseph Lindsley. Joseph, after we spoke yesterday, there were reports of air raid alerts all across Ukraine. How are things where you are?
Bob, well, we had last night in Kyiv, there were strange reports of a flash in the sky, something that seemed unusual. Of course, everyone in Kyiv is accustomed to seeing missiles and drones coming to their city. But this seemed different, and rumors were flying that maybe this was a NASA satellite falling on Kyiv. And now it seems that we don't know for sure, but it seems that it was a meteor that hit somewhere near Kyiv. And so, what are the odds? Of all the places in the world that a meteor would fall, it would be Kyiv in wartime. But people have been through so much they could almost, they could laugh about it. And but it was a spectacular vision in the sky. Meanwhile, there were Russian attacks through the night. The Russians have continued to send, instead of sending missiles with massive attacks, they've been sending on a regular basis these Iranian suicide drones into various cities around Ukraine. And so last night, people were following the news. There were reports of these drone objects moving toward Kyiv. In the end, they were going toward the city of Dnipro, and air defense, I believe, shot all of those down. And as people are trying to figure out what is the Kremlin's strategy on this right now, and it seems that, I guess, the best thinking on this is that they're trying to test Ukrainian air defense and to weaken it, but really to see where its weak points might be, and that's why they're using these less expensive kamikaze drones rather than missiles. And perhaps they're resupplying themselves after they've, in fact, since September 11th, 2022, the Russians fired at least 850 missiles at Ukraine. But out of those 850 missiles, 750 were shot down, which is really a remarkable success rate. And that's without the Patriot missile defense system. That's using, old equipment and human intelligence and know-how. And so the Russians have lost a lot of missiles. And so now they're playing this little game with drones while we wait, we're still in this waiting period to see who makes the first major move. And while that's happening, sometimes I can look at a little bit of the news in America. I see there's a lot of tension in American society, and people getting shot by showing up at the wrong house, and things like that throughout the country. And I was thinking there are tensions here in Ukraine too. The other night I saw there was a bar fight of some veterans and soldiers, and there's frustrations here in Lviv with you have so many people from eastern Ukraine are here living in Lviv, and they speak Russian in the streets. And no one confronts them about it, but underneath their breath, the local people, the Lviviani, are frustrated. They wish they would make an effort to speak Ukrainian. I know many people who have lost their businesses, fallen into depression. So there, in fact, and there's a lot of people complain about what they call the Monaco battalion, the super wealthy who drive nice cars, and every chance they get, they go to, Paris or something, and without lifting much of a finger to help the war effort. And so there are some of these tensions in society. I think would be normal anywhere, but there's not violence. No one is shooting each other, even though people are now, many people are heavily armed. And so there still is this sense of cooperation. And I saw that yesterday when I was mentioning to you all on air, the Frontline Kitchen, this group of volunteers, and they produce, I was wrong. I said 20,000 meals a week. It's 20,000 meals a day.
Wow.
That they produce for soldiers at the front line. It's really extraordinary in a tiny little underground kitchen. A team of volunteers from all over the world. And they contacted me yesterday and said that the authorities had told them they had until May 1st to get out of their space, which, especially as we're thinking about there might be some, big events coming up soon. It's important to keep the soldiers, well nourished. And they were frustrated. And my first reaction, sort of having been a journalist in New York, we gotta hit hard against the authorities and have really have some aggressive headlines. And I talked to a friend that runs local media here, Tavoya Misto, and he said, well, in the attitude of Ukraine's Maidan revolution, they like to solve problems before getting angry. And so I connected the people at the kitchen to my friend, the publisher of the local media, whose whole mission is to solve problems. And he called up to the head of the government department that was, relevant to this decision. And now they're working to get a solution together. And the press is still going to get a nice story, but it won't be angry headlines. It'll be a good story about how people cooperate to solve problems. And now that kitchen does not have to leave their premises by May 1st, and they can keep preparing food for the soldiers. And as I was reflecting on this, I've been speaking with an American official who I've quoted before. She spent a lot of time in Ukraine, and in Ukraine, she said you don't feel helpless in the face of bureaucracy. Provided you participate in the society, if you don't lock yourself away from it, you build up these relationships that build trust. And that means when you have a problem, there's always someone you can call. And I think sometimes in the West, people might look at that as corruption, but there's no money exchange. It's just people working together to solve problems without a vast bureaucracy. And there's this principle of the Pareto theory that, 20% of the people are active in society and everyone else is sort of watching. And as my friend, the American said, she said, a lot of people think somebody else must know what's going on because I don't know what's happening. And Ukrainians don't buy into that. Ukrainians want to be actively part of their society. And so it's more the other way around. 80% of people, and we've really seen this in the wartime, 80% of the people are actively involved in every way they possibly can, even while continuing with their day jobs, trying to help the victory effort. And so this is again, as another friend said, a Ukrainian engineer who works on getting cars to soldiers to the front lines. He said, our government was not so important during the beginning of the war. It was 99% of the work was done by the simple people. And so even with the tensions in society, people have, I think it's this ability to have conversations with each other and to know that if they work together, things are going to be better. And that's what we still see here every single day.
Again, the spirit of the people so admirable, and your story there of a small victory must feel very good. Here on the news last night, Joseph, we were watching this 57-year-old Ukrainian woman who is testifying to lawmakers here that Russian forces beat her, threatened to rape her, and forced her to dig her own grave. So these accounts of Russian war crimes, again, I ask you, is anything going to come of these investigations? Is it possible?
Well, and this has to be the question for the world. And I think, it's a matter of keeping these stories, in the front of the news. I mean, you look at it as a parallel example. There's that Chinese tennis player, Peng Shuai, who made an accusation against one of the top people in the Chinese government. And the Women's Tennis Association made a strong stand. They said, we will boycott China until she's freed. Well, last week, they lifted that boycott and she's not freed. And so I think it's the same thing with we look at the war crimes in Ukraine. Like, it's a matter of, will people have the resolve to keep standing against this evil and not to get bored by it and not to forget it. I just saw a video, it was a 2-minute video of the city of Nikopol, a city I've been to many times. It's a beautiful place on a river in southern Ukraine, across from the largest nuclear plant in Europe. And for 2 minutes, I think the film is from yesterday, the Russians pounded the city with artillery from across the river. And as I watched it, I was, what is the goal of this? It's impossible to comprehend this sort of evil. It's an impulse to destruction. And the same way they do that to cities, they do that to human beings. And this is what we have to, and I think, even as I talk about these positive elements of Ukrainian society and how people cooperate, I think in some sense Russia is jealous of that and did not know how to build that within their culture, and so they're seeking to erase it and to erase its memory. And even there were some reports that when Russians invaded, or especially early in the war, but even now when they take a new territory, that their soldiers were ordered to pillage the place so that they could claim that this is what the Ukrainians had done and this is what they were liberating them from. But we see a society. I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone now, but it's a society that's hell-bent on destruction coming from Moscow. And so I'm glad to know that she was testifying, and we have to keep sharing these stories. Otherwise, I mean, we say never again. How much do we really mean that?
Joseph, we pray that you and your fellow country folks there and the soldiers stay strong. We'll talk tomorrow.
Till tomorrow. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important, that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Что он сказал?
Well, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?
Ебать.